I think of home, I think of a place where there's love overflowing. I wish I was home, I wish I was back there with the things I've been knowing, wings that make the time.
Hi, my name is Larry White, and I am your producer and director of The Inner Beat. The Inner Beat is a socially conscious program that sometimes showcases cultural events as well as community events. And occasionally, we'll even bring a little song and dance. So sit back and enjoy The Inner Beat.
Good evening. Excuse my voice. I'm a little fighting a cold and fighting a summer flu, so forgive me. Just want to start by saying it's a blessing and honor to be here in the John Henry Clarke house. Our apologies for being late. My wife and I, our child care fell through, but we're here nevertheless. So just want to give my appreciation for allowing me to speak. And I just want to talk a little bit. The first thing I want to start, when I looked at the title, Can Learning African History Keep Our Young People Out of Jail? I said the same thing. I said, no, actually it might put you in jail. However, like you said, your reasoning for being in jail will be different. And I want to start with the Carter G. Woodson quote. First of all, Sankofa reminds us we always got to go back to the root, go back to the past while walking into the future. And Carter G. Woodson, he has a quote, and I hope I get it. I may paraphrase a little bit, but he says, "To handicap a child is to teach him that his black face is a curse and his aspirations to change his condition are hopeless. It's the worst kind of lynching, and it leads one to a life of crime and vagabondage." And if I paraphrase, he says, when you make a young person feel as though they have no hope, that they are cursed. He talked about that doll test. By the time our young people are 5, 6 years old, they already have an inferiority complex. They've already been conditioned of no fault of their own to believe that they are less than, that they are less attractive, that they are less intelligent, right? And when you do that to people, when you make them feel, when you have a history, when you have an education system that completely removes you from it, where you don't see yourself in the education system, where you watch the news and you see everyone fighting, you see Israel fighting, you see Iraq, you see everybody fighting, you even see your own people fighting for other people, but you don't see anybody who stands up for you. Where are our great heroes? Where are our leaders? Where are people standing up to protect us? When you don't see that, it leads you to a sense of hopelessness. And I just want to talk about how important it is for us to give our young people that African history, because one of my mottos is, if we're not intentional about breaking the cycle, I tell all my young people, if you are not intentional about breaking the cycle that you've inherited, of no fault of your own, the cycle will break you. What do I mean by that? I mean that my young people, by the time they're 17, 18 years old, a lot of those young people that you see in Ferguson, and one of the issues I have with what's going on in Ferguson is a lot of the middle class black folks, right? A lot of the folks that work in the house by day are critical and going along with CNN and calling these young people who are righteously angry, right, are going along and calling them violent and calling them looters and all these negative names. And we've spent more time talking about that than we have talking about the murderers who have killed our people. And I've been arguing with a lot of my peers because I say, how are you going to judge these young brothers for being angry and wanting to be violent? Because these are the young brothers who get beat up on a regular basis by the police. These are the ones that have the scars on their back. These are the ones that once the cameras leave, no one is going to be there to protect them, right? So you talk about what does it mean? I have friends who have been jumped, right? Who have been beat up and robbed in their own community by people who look like them. And Amos Wilson and all our great scholars will help us to understand that vertical violence from white supremacy and oppression leads to horizontal violence, right? Because even when we look at these young people and all the trauma that they're experiencing now, when all the cameras and everything leaves, who are they going to take that negative energy out on? Who are they going to take it out on? Right now, at least they get to throw something at the police. So I'm not saying that, people are saying, so are you saying that the violence is good? Are you saying that the violence? I'm saying I understand. And as a person who understands what my young people are going through, I understand that we have to have empathy. And guess what? If we don't have young people with that net turner mindset, I like the fact that you called it an insurrection, Because if we don't have, if our young people, these people who are killing each other and who ain't got nothing to lose, if we don't empower them like they're empowered now, because I got friends who are in Ferguson, and right now Bloods and Crips and gangs are united in protecting projects from police, right? And if we do not give our young people a context for understanding the war that they have inherited, if we don't give it, shame on us. You mean to tell me that we are the only people in the world that can't have an army that protects us? You mean to tell me that, tell me I'm getting on a soapbox, but at the end of the day, you mean to tell me everyone's talking about how great Officer Johnson is? Officer Johnson can stand with these troops and rush innocent people, but he can't protect us? Marcus Garvey reminds us that people without knowledge of history are like trees with no roots. It is no coincidence that those of us who don't know our names, who were 3/5 human in the Constitution, right? It's no coincidence that we're living like this. And I gotta be honest, I didn't see the whole documentary, but I have to believe that only a slave can value the laws of their slave masters. How can I value your laws when you hung me from trees? That's right. I would never give Charles Manson credibility on any of the, or Charles Hines, because he's the one that prosecuted me and my students for standing up against him. So on a very fundamental note, how are we even talking about, you know, my wife's going to talk about it. One of her mentors was Derek Bell, and Derek Bell told her, we're never going to get free through their laws. But we have to fight for this. I'm sorry for taking some of your speech, baby. But he said that we still have to fight for the sake of fighting. I'm not giving that to my son. I'm not giving that to my kids. That is the legacy of the slave foreman. I'm giving Denmark Vesey. I'm giving Nat Turner. I'm giving David Walker. Because for me to tell my child that you have to accept your enslavement and just fight for the sake of fighting, just so you can assimilate and be a part of the American dream, you are giving them slavery. My Jewish friends would never accept that. They would never see their success as dependent on Hitler accepting them. Our community, we're like battered wives, right? We think that our husband has to change in order for us to change. So what does this have, what are we talking about in the context of jails? Don't know about the jails, because we know we know a lot of our greatest leaders. If you are doing the work, you're probably going to find yourself in a cell. The Bible says that prophets are never welcomed in their land. You're going to find yourself in a lion's den, right? However, if our young people know who they are, if they know who they are, and it's amazing, because our kids are going to school, they don't know anything about Muhammad Ali. I mean, I'm talking about people not too long ago. You show them Muhammad Ali, and all they know is LeBron James. They need to know about this man who gives up everything, right? And has a piggy bank. They need to know about what Harriet Tubman did. They need to know about all these stories, because then they will realize that they can create an agenda as opposed to just following an agenda. We don't want our people to, even the narrative on the documentary, we've been through so much and now we're presidents. And now we're this. Yeah, now we're still enslaved. And now we're worse off than we were 40 years ago if you go through Bed-Stuy, my neighborhood. So I'm tired of talking about progress when my people are being annihilated. We don't need that. We don't need that, because our great-great-grandchildren are going to be doing the same thing if we do not pass down the African legacy that lets them know you are descendants of those who survived the Middle Passage. You had math and science while these Europeans were still in caves. If we don't introduce them to the work of John Henry Clarke and create institutions that can sustain them, because if we plant the right seeds, we don't even have to do anything, because they will be too culturally grounded to accept it, and they'll create the solutions that we're too enslaved to create. And that's the reality of the situation, right? So we're not going to be free until we create our own system and our own laws, because as long as we're begging master, you cannot appeal to a people's moral consciousness who don't have one. That's right. That's insanity. If you are a child molested, you're not babysitting my child. You have a history of molesting my children. Why are we waiting in the courts for these people who have covered up everything? Immaterial, we done been through it. Anything from this point that we accept, if we are adults, it's on us.
Wake up everybody, no more sleeping in bed. No more backward thinking, time for thinking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There is so much hatred, war and poverty.